Hey, this is Frank Yosa, CEO of Ketone. So today I want to talk about longer rides over or runs or whatever you're doing that are over 2 hours. Uh, People ask me about 4-hour, 24-hour runs, and it's complicated. I know you might have heard me say this 100 times in different videos, but it is. There are many variables. So let's talk about what happens after the 90-minute or 2-hour mark. So that is the amount of time that people have glycogen stored in their system. So after 2 hours, people tend to bonk if they're using just glucose alone and they haven't re-upped. So we have pretty reliable protocols for 90 minutes and up to 2 hours, but after 2 hours, I'll give you some options, but it is exponentially trickier. There are many variables, such as, are you keto, obviously non-keto, are you in a fasted state already, or did you have a huge breakfast beforehand? All those things matter. So what some people will do is they'll take a certain amount up front. They can either, if you're in a fasted state, you could take as little as 10, 15, 20 mLs and no carbs. But if you take too much, it'll lower your blood glucose too much, and that in and of itself will make you bonk. So you don't want too much. Or you can do the dual fuel protocol where you take much more, but then you have to take much more glucose. But keep in mind, glucose is the dirty fuel that creates lactic acid. Ketones don't create lactic acid. So there's pros and cons of doing the combination versus by itself. But they'll take a bolus up front, and then you can either re-up the ketone ester at 1 hour mark or every 90 minutes and spread it out. How much? Anywhere from 5 mLs to 15, 20 mLs. Again, too much can lower your blood sugar too much. So you can either take them in boluses. At the 60 or 90 minute mark, you take a small shot of it. Or another option is, if you have multiple water bottles, you might keep the first water bottle with just electrolytes, but then the second or third or fourth water bottle, some people go 24 hours, you can actually put the ketone ester in there. Now, you might be able to actually get more ketone ester into your system, because if it's being slowly released through water, you're not going to have as much of a blood glucose drop as if you took a bolus of it. So again, you could try anywhere between 10 to 15 mLs of KE4, which would be 1.5 bottles of KE4 into your drink mix that has no carbs. Another option is carbs, but that's a whole other discussion. And slow release and see how long it goes. So we have a Facebook group that has 1,000 people, and they discuss different protocols. And we don't agree with the protocols that have been done for all these clinical trials. They do 2 hours of where the ester is good at working, 2 hours of a steady state, and then they do a 17-minute sprint. Well, we already know that it doesn't work very well with sprints, so not really sure what they're trying to prove there. They should be somehow testing the 2-hour effort, or hills or altitude. And I'll put up a separate video on my ideal clinical trial. So you can take the ketone ester steadily. We have 1,500 people in the Facebook group, and yes, there are several people that do super long events, but you need hundreds and hundreds of people's feedback, which is what we got for the under 2-hour events, to be able to make our protocols. But there's only half a dozen people that are doing these super long events and talking about it. So there might be hundreds, but maybe only 5 or 10 talk about it. And one will be keto, one won't be keto, and they already have their own protocols. We did a video with one gentleman who did a half marathon, and his protocol was super complex with some Vespa in there and some slow release carbs. So it's hard for me to come out and say, here's your protocol, when people have already spent years devising exactly what they want their protocol to be, and they want ketone ester just to drop on top of that. Doesn't necessarily work that way, because the glucose and ketones kind of compete with each other. So we just don't have enough data. I even tried to write to 10 people that had previously written in the group that were Ironman athletes and try to do like a survey. What have you done? And I got one reply. So we just don't have enough feedback, not enough data points. So you're going to have to try yourself. I'm sending you this video because otherwise I'd get on the phone with you and just for 1 hour just explain this exact same problem. Try different amounts, try re-upping. It works exponentially well on hills, so you could be strategic about when you use it. So using your glucose, and then the hills are coming, and hit it with some ketones, but also recovery. But you should also be focusing on using it throughout your workouts. So if you have this one huge 24-hour race, you might even just use the ketone ester 2 to 4 months every day beforehand, and go back to what's tried and true on race day. You don't want to mess around with too many things for the first time on race day. And you can't, the problem with the 24-hour race is we always say, try it in practice. Well, you might try it in practice 3 or 4 hours, and just because that works doesn't mean it's going to work at the 24-hour mark. So if you have new data points, please leave it in the comments below, and join the Facebook group and share what's worked for you, so we can share that experience with other people, even bad experiences. We love to hear, hey, this did not work. I tried just using the esters and I bonked it this time. I just talked to someone who actually just talked about either 4 or 6 hour fasted workout just with ketones. That's where I think it's heading, but I wouldn't think that it's not reliable enough for you to try it on game day, on race day. So you can just try it perhaps leading up to the event, and then on the event, you put in a token amount of ketone ester, maybe even for the placebo effect, but just go back to the tried and true of what you're used to. You don't want placebo effect. Can work both ways. It can help you, but it can also hurt you if if you're scared about using something different. So there we go. Long workouts. Just really don't know. If you have any questions directly that I wasn't able to answer here, email me directly, frank@ketoneaid.com. But make sure to subscribe. We're going to have a lot more content that you won't see anywhere else. It's funny when I talk to someone, they say, okay, well, I'm going to go off and do some research. And it's kind of like, well, there really isn't much research out there. There's a few papers, but again, the protocols that they used, I don't think are relevant. It's nothing that I've ever suggested someone using. So watch out for the video on how I would do a clinical trial. And thanks a lot. Make sure to leave a comment and subscribe. Thanks. Bye.